The Bible reading this morning is from the book of Daniel, chapter 12, verses 1 to 13, the full chapter. At the time, Michael, the great prince who protects your people, will arise. Some scholars believe that is Michael, the archangel, not an earthly prince. There will be a time of distress, such as not happened from the beginning of nations until then. But at that time, your people, everyone whose name is found written in the book, will be delivered. Multitudes who sleep in the dust of the earth will awake, some to everlasting life, others to shame and everlasting contempt. Those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the heavens, and those who have many bring many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. But you, Daniel, roll up and see the words of the scroll until the time of the end. Many will go there to increase knowledge. Then I, Daniel, looked, and there before me stood two others, one on this bank of the river and one on the opposite bank. One of them said to the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, "How long will it be before these astonishing things are fulfilled?" The man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, lifted his right hand and his left hand toward heaven, and I heard him swear by him who lives forever, saying, "It will be a time and a half, or a year, or 2.5 years, when the power of the holy people will be forever broken. All these things will be completed." I heard, but I did not understand. So I asked, "My Lord, what will be the outcome of all this?" He replied, "Go your way, Daniel, because the words are rolled up and sealed until the end of time. Many will be purified, made spotless and refined, but the wicked will continue to be wicked. None of the wicked will understand, but those who are wise will understand. From the time that the daily sacrifice is abolished and the abomination that causes desolation is set up, there will be 1,290 days. By our calendar, about 3.5 years. Blessed is the one who waits for and reaches the end of the 1,335 days, about 3.7 years. As for you, go your way till the end. You will rest, and then at the end of days, you will rise to receive your allotted inheritance. Thanks be to God.
Thank you, Gordon. I always enjoy your reading. I was waiting there for a few comments you usually make, but
We don't want.
okay.
Well, I put a little bit of extra information in for you.
Okay, yeah, very good. I'm going to ask you to do something a little bit different. And who can remember the song "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star"? Now I wonder what you are, up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky.
Steak kidney pie.
Like?
Steak and kidney pie.
Like a steak and kidney pie, okay. Yeah, we're going to sing this together. We're going to have Georgina play for us and take us back to our Sunday school days. but there's a reason for me playing this, and the reason will become obvious after a little while. But twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder who you are, up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. Can we stand and let's sing? We're going to have the music, but we'll have to do it without it. All right. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Thank you, you did very well. Give yourself a round of applause. This is what God wants you to be. A twinkling star, not in the sky, but in our world. Someone who reflects the light of God into the lives of other people. We're starting, as Gordon said, a series, or Graham said, a series in Daniel. I was, we talked about in our group, when we're looking at what will we preach about over the coming term. And I had this strong feeling that we should preach on Daniel. And the major reason for that is that Daniel lived in a world which was a foreign world to him, an antagonistic world to him, where he and his friends were without the support, exiles from their country, far away from the people they loved. And Daniel and his friends were being asked to be stars in a dark and gloomy world, which was Babylon. God wants us, you and I, to be stars in a world which is dark. We've talked about some of those things during our prayer time today. And Brigitte and I, on our holiday, decided that we'd like to go to church in Christchurch. I always get that and Queenstown mixed. Christchurch. And so we looked for a Baptist church, and there was one in Oxford Parade or something like that, and we went along. And they were preaching about Daniel, the series in Daniel. I thought, yay! Somebody else was thinking the same as we are. It sort of gave a seal to what we're doing. Daniel's life was like a little star for the people of Israel and for the people of Babylon. Daniel lived in the 6th century before Christ, when young men of Israel were taken captive. Their country of Israel was basically destroyed, the temple desecrated, most of the leaders killed or imprisoned or deported elsewhere. And they were trained in the courts of King Nebuchadnezzar, who was the conquering emperor who came in and took over Israel and Jerusalem. The theme that I want to pick up on is, how do we live in a hostile country? And increasingly, I think, in our world, we as Christians are finding the world out there hostile towards the things of God, hostile towards Christians, hostile towards the message that we bring. the book of Daniel was written to give the people of Israel hope for living in that kind of world. Far from their country, far from what they were used to. To realise that ultimately God still is in control of the world. That ultimately kings and armies will bow to our God. That God is not only creator of the world, but controller of the world, and they are in God's hands. You and I live in a world which is increasingly hostile to belief in God. Christian practices of Christmas, of Easter, of going to church is decreasing. Christian teaching, Christian morals are being abandoned in our world. Daniel is a book which is written for our times, not only Daniel's time. I'm doing something else that's a little bit different today. Instead of starting at the beginning of the book, I'm starting at the end of the book in chapter 12. At the time Michael, the great prince who protects your people, will arise, there will be a time of distress such as not happened from the beginning of the nations until now. As Gordon said, Michael was an archangel who was to protect the people of Israel. This time of distress that was the people of Israel confronted happened in 597 BC. King Jehoiakim was deported to Babylon. Total destruction of the temple in Jerusalem. There was a similar occurrence, AD 70, after the time of Jesus. There was a repeat where armies, the Roman armies, came in and captured Jerusalem. The Jewish people were massacred. Christians had been warned about it, and so they head for the hills away from where the opposition were. But so many Jewish people were massacred. Jewish people in 1937 through to 1945 went through a similar experience under the Nazi regime in Germany. People were killed as part of the Holocaust. Thousands of people died, were exposed to violence, starvation and destruction. Pope Benedict in 2010 said this: there were more Christians in the world persecuted today than what there have ever been. 100,000 Christians are killed every year, he said. It's something that Mari brings our attention to from time to time. Opposition to Christian faith is increasing in Australia. Politics is increasingly introduced into our churches, trying to control the way we operate as churches, attacking our beliefs, attacking our understanding of marriage, of sexuality, of education, and of parenting. You see, Babylon, the experience of Daniel, wasn't just an experience back there, it's been an experience throughout history. And Babylon is an experience of our time. Every age has its Babylon. The book of Daniel says that at the end of time there will be an ultimate persecution. The book of Revelation picks up on that same concept and idea. Daniel in chapter 12 talks about that the Christians ultimately will be saved and protected in these difficult times. But at that time, your people, everyone whose name is found in the book, will be delivered. It's interesting, the book of life is mentioned a number of times throughout the Bible. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be, said David the psalmist in Psalm 139. Daniel talks of this same book. Jewish people who suffer for God will be delivered. Multitudes who sleep in the dust of the earth will awake and come to everlasting life. Those who are faithful to God have this ultimate hope. Deliverance may not come in this life for many people, but heaven awaits. Revelation chapter 3 and verse 5, with Jesus speaking, he says to the church, "The one who is victorious will, like them, be dressed in white. I will never blot out the name of that person from the book of life, but will acknowledge that name before my Father and his angels in heaven." Malachi chapter 4 and verse 6, God speaking, "A scroll of remembrance was written for those who feared the Lord. They will be mine in the day when I make up my treasured possessions, says God." Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego were facing a burning furnace, and we'll hear about that. In that passage it says, "If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we will serve is able to save us, and he will rescue us from your hand, O king," they say to King Nebuchadnezzar. "But even if he does not, we want you to know, O king, that we will not serve your gods." Your name and my name is written in God's book. Even before we were born, we were talking about that a few months ago. If we acknowledge God, he will acknowledge us. What we decide in this world determines where we'll be in the next. And this is where we get to the glow like stars in a dark world. Daniel says in this chapter, "Those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the heavens, and those who lead many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever." I was thinking about wise people. Who do you think are wise people in this context? Do you think you want to have your thoughts?
My dear friend and mentor, Reverend Dr. Harold Taylor. He's just the nicest person I've ever known.
Okay.
He's now on deathbed, basically. But
Yeah. What makes up being wise? Yes. Well,
Jack's wise.
Who's
Look up to Jack.
Jack is wise.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a lovely thing to have said about you, Jack. Yeah.
Bit of a study.
Anyone else, any thoughts?
Oh yes, I'm married to a wise woman.
A wise woman. You're a wise man. Acknowledge your wife. Okay.
Those
Yeah.
that say yes to Jesus.
Sorry?
Those that say yes to Jesus.
Those who say yes to Jesus. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I was thinking a man or woman of faith, a man or woman who reject violence, who support the weak, who stand for truth, who respect those who are in authority. And I was thinking probably, and I was sort of getting that from the book of Daniel, those ideas of, but then I thought of Jesus in Matthew chapter 5, where he talks about the Beatitudes, and his description of people who are wise are those who are poor in spirit, those who are mourners, people who are sorry for the state of the world, and those who are meek, who promote others rather than themselves, people who hunger for what is right, hunger for what is good, people who are kind and merciful, people who are pure in heart, who don't have ulterior motives, but what you see is what you get, people who are peacemakers, people who are persecuted, Jesus talks about too. And I was thinking about, okay, Daniel probably, Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego in the context of the book we're reading and thinking about. And of course, the standard ones that most people would say, as an example, Mother Teresa, Martin Luther King, Billy Graham, I guess all those sort of people. In my own life, I would think of my mum, my uncle, as people, and you would probably have people in your lives that you would see as being wise people. I was thinking about it, and I don't know why, but the name Sir Douglas Nicholls came to mind.
Yes.
And I've done some research, and I just want to share it a couple of times today about Douglas Nicholls, an Aboriginal Australia from the Yorta Yorta people, born on a reserve in New South Wales, youngest of 5 children, went to school to grade 3, a Christian family he was raised with. He saw as a young boy of 8 years age, saw his sister, who was 16 years of age, taken off by the police and forced to do domestic training elsewhere. The family came to Melbourne, and he joined the Northcote Football Club and started playing for the VFA. He became a speedy wingman and spectacular skills and abilities. He became the best wingman in the CFA. He was 5'2" tall, can you believe? 1929, he was part of the premiership team for Northcote. And 1932, he joined VFL Fitzroy and became one of their star players. 1935, he played for Victoria. In fact, he played 4 times for Victoria. In 1938, he retired because he had knee injuries after 6 seasons. In 1947, he became a non-playing coach for Northcote. Yes?
You forgot to mention that he played for Carlton before he played for Fitzroy.
That's right.
The trainers of the club wouldn't work on him because he was black.
Yep. And that's exactly the kind of thing that I'm going to highlight. He was attacked by even fellow players as well as the community because of his colour. At times he'd find himself sitting in the playing room in the training section by himself and no one talking to him. And yet he became increasingly popular with the public. Outside of football, he became secretary of the Australian Aborigines League. He was an advocate for the change of the Australian Constitution and referendum, which is very topical at the moment. And he lobbied members of Parliament. Participated in a day of mourning, the 26th of January 1938. And this is what is written. Doug Nicholls rose to support the resolution on behalf of the Victorian Aboriginals League that day, saying this: Aboriginal girls have been sent to Aboriginal reserves and have not been given any opportunity to improve themselves. Their treatment has been disgusting. The white people have done nothing for us whatever. Put on reserves with no proper education. How can Aborigines take their place as equals with whites? Now is a chance to have things altered. We must fight our very hardest for this cause. After 150 years of our people, we are still bossed and influenced by white people. I know that we could proudly hold our own with others if given the chance. Do not let us forget also those of our own people who are still in primitive state. It is for them that we should try to do something. We should all work in cooperation with the progress of the Aborigines throughout the Commonwealth. Nicholls became the founder of one of the founders of the Federal Council for Advancement of Aborigines and Torres Strait Islanders. He did community work and Christian ministry. Following his mother's death, Doug turned his life over and gave his life to Jesus. He was baptised at the Northcote Church of Christ in 1935. He was a lay preacher at the Fitzroy Gore Street Mission. In 1941, he was called up to fight in the army during the Second World War in the 29th Battalion. In 1942, can you believe this, the Fitzroy Police asked for him to be released to work as a social worker amongst Aboriginal community in Fitzroy, working with people with alcohol and abuse, gambling and social problems. The group grew. Douglas became ultimately their pastor and was recognised and was ordained by the Church of Christ. Seems to me that Douglas Nichols was a shining star in a dark world and is an example to us of how we should be in our world. When will the end of time arrive? How long will this be? The passage goes on in chapter 12. Then I, Daniel, looked, and there before me stood two others, one on this bank of the river and one on the opposite bank. And one of them said to the man clothed in linen who was above the waters of the river, how long will it be before these astonishing things are fulfilled, to the end of the world and to when God takes control? It's a question that has been raised not only then in Daniel's time, but in every time since. Daniel's question was raised by the disciples to Jesus in Matthew 24 and 25. Tell us when all of this will happen, they said to Jesus. The same question was asked by the martyrs, Christian martyrs, during the Roman persecution. How long, sovereign Lord, until you judge the inhabitants of the earth and avenge our blood, they cried out, for those who had lost their lives during that period of time. Jesus taught, no one knows that day or hour, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, only the Father knows that time when that is going to happen. As in the days of Noah, Jesus said, so shall the coming of Jesus be. So you don't know when it's going to happen. Two men will be in a field and one will be taken. It'll just happen suddenly like that. It'll like a thief in the night. And Jesus said, you don't know when it's going to happen, just be prepared. The passage goes on, and I've entitled it, Get On With Your Life. I heard, but did not understand, says Daniel. I asked, my Lord, when will the outcome of this be? And he replied, go your way, Daniel, because the words are closed up and sealed unto the end of time. Can you imagine being Daniel, being a prophet in a foreign country? Daniel only had his mates, Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego, and there may have been some others as well that he spent time with. In a foreign country as a teenager, there's no mention of family, no mention of him getting married, no mention of having children. He served 4 foreign kings, Nebuchadnezzar, Belshazzar, Darius and Cyrus, over a period of 70 years. He was an administrator, a magician, one of the people who were considered to be able to tell what's going to happen into the future. He was put in charge of the wise men of those kings. He was in a royal court. He became the 3rd highest ruler within the kingdom. Daniel was able to dream dreams and to interpret dreams for the kings, but he wasn't able to understand what was going to happen in his own life and for his own people. There are things that he's told here by the angel. He's told there are things that you just cannot know. You're not being given the answers. 70 years, can you imagine living in a foreign country? Sometimes life is just tough. Sometimes there are no answers. The angel says, to Daniel, go your own way. Get on with your own life. I just thought that's a message for us at times. A message to those who have suffered persecution down through the ages. Get on with being a star in a dark world. God will look after the rest. Then the passage goes on, and Gordon, I think you said you struggled to get anything out of this, and I just thought, here's perhaps where the answers are. Many will be purified. This is what the angel says to Daniel. Many will be purified, made spotless and refined, but the wicked will continue to be the wicked. The messenger from God to Daniel says you are going through a process. It's all part of God's plan for your life, Daniel. You and others will be purified. This is what happens as a result of persecution, of opposition, of going through difficult times. It puts you under pressure. Boiling water to 150 degrees will get rid of all impurities in that water. 6 hours in the sunlight with solar radiation and heat will kill all impurities in the water. And I was thinking, that's interesting, the sunlight. Put yourself under the rays of Jesus' life and that will purify you. Life lived in difficult circumstances with God will make you a better person. Value what is happening in our lives today as a church. What has happened to Christians in our world. See that this is a time where God can refine us, purify us. And that's one of the other words that is used. You are made spotless. The heavenly messenger says to Daniel, you are made spotless as a result of going through this situation. You get rid of all the clutter in your life. You keep what's important as a person. You put things in their proper place. You organise your spaces. That's what making a home spotless. You do all those kind of things. And that's what God was saying to Daniel. You're getting rid of all the muck in your life. You're concentrating on what is important in life because you're under pressure. Be pleased that that is happening because that means it makes you concentrate on things that are most important. And again, it uses the word you are refined like gold. You're placed in a furnace. Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego were actually put in a furnace. And they weren't consumed because a fourth person, Jesus, was in their midst. Heated to 2,000 degrees and gets rid of the impurities. In going through opposition, going through persecution, God is making you and I into being a better person. How to flourish in an antagonistic world. And I think this is what Daniel is on about. None of the wicked will understand, but those who are wise will understand. People are going to have different ideas to you, different beliefs, different practices. Non-Christians will often not understand where you're coming from. When you stand against another person's actions and teach against it, when we as churches teach that some things are wrong, they will say that we are being hateful, that we are being unkind. In fact, Jesus teaches us to love the sinner, but to hate the action. God sends his rain, Jesus says, on both the good and the bad. You and I are called to do good to those who are in the wrong. We're to respect those whom God has put in authority over us. You know, I went through the whole of the book of Daniel, And I cannot find a spot where Daniel is abusive or is critical of a person in terms of their personality and who they are in one area. I couldn't find it. I challenge you to find it. Daniel is always respectful. He will tell the truth. He will say, God is going to do this to you. God is going to do this. God is going to do this. But he always respects and uses respectful words. He stands for the truth, stands for God, stands for his people, but he always respects, always honours the person who's put in authority over him. And it's interesting that Daniel is respected and listened to and honoured because he does. Going through and coming back to Doug Nicholls again. Doug Nicholls, who stood for Aboriginal people, stood for people who were down and out in his own area, stood against parliamentarians, asked them to change their way of doing things, held up the spotlight on the way we treat Aboriginal people. Respectful always, honouring people always. This is what happened. In 1957, he was appointed member of the Order of the British Empire. In 1962, he was chosen by the Father's Day Council of Australia as Victoria's Father of the Year for outstanding leadership. And for inspiring example, he set the community in his unfailing efforts to further the cause of the Australian Aboriginal. In 1968, he was promoted to Officer of the Order of the British Empire. In 1970, he was invited to be a guest when Queen Elizabeth came to Australia and given a position of honour. In 1973, he was, and I love this, King of Moomba. In 1976, he was appointed the 28th Governor of South Australia, the first Aboriginal person appointed to viceregal office. In 1977, he was appointed a Knight Commander of the Royal Victorian Order. In the 1980s, Douglas Nicholls Sporting Complex was built in Thornbury. In 1961, the Canberra suburb of Nicholls was named after him. In 2001, a new chapel in the Preston Northern Community Church of Christ, a church where he was baptised, was named after him. In 2002, the establishment of the Pastor Sir Douglas Nicholls Fellowship for Indigenous Leadership. In 2006, they commemorated the centre of his birth as a statue of, and built a statue of him, 1.5 times his life size. The first statue of an Aboriginal person. 2011, he inducted the Victorian Aboriginal Honour Roll. 2016, the AFL named their Indigenous round after him and continue to do so. In 2018, the Federal Electorate Division of Murray renamed Nicholls in honour of Sir Doug and Lady Nicholls. In 2018, a Google Doodle was created to celebrate his 112th birthday. In 2002, the portrait of an Australian post stamp was released on the 7th of July 2022 on the anniversary of Nicholls' first knighting and also during the NAIDOC week. Do you get what I'm saying? Be a star. Stand for what is right. Do it as Daniel did in our community. Be a star. Stand for God. Live for Him. Speak for Him. Share with others. Serve others. But do it with love. Do it with respect. Do it honouring people That's the way Daniel did it. That's the way Sir Douglas Nicholls did it. And I encourage you to do it too. It certainly encourages me. We're going to sing that song again, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Does that make sense now? There are actually 4 verses we've got. We'll see how we go singing the 4 verses, but I thought they were particularly appropriate. When the blazing sun is gone, we actually changed the word, Brigitte and I, it was actually S-U-N, but when the blazing sun is gone, when nothing shines upon, then you show your little light, twinkle, twinkle, all the night. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. When the traveller in the dark thanks you for your tiny spark, he could not see which way to go if you do not twinkle so. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. And the last verse, in the dark blue sky you sleep, you keep while you through my window peep, and you never shut your eye till the sun is in the sky. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. That's what we are to our world. Stars in a dark world, shining the light of Jesus. Amen?